Hey there, Nablis here. Today I'll be talking about the evolution of the atomic model. So let's begin from scratch. So what is an atom? You see, the atom is the building block of practically everything, and it is essentially the particle of matter that makes up elements. Now, in brief, elements are pure substances, and they're those little guys you see on the periodic table. Now, I'll be talking about the periodic table and elements and compounds and all that good stuff another time. But for now, let's talk about those atoms. Now, let's begin with the anatomy of atoms. So the atom is composed of three main subatomic particles: the proton, the neutron, and the electron. Protons are positively charged, and you can remember that because of the first letter P for positive. And as for neutrons, those don't really have a positive or negative charge, and you can remember it for being N for neutral. And then we have the electrons being negatively charged. Protons and neutrons are both bound together by a nuclear membrane, which is kind of like a border, in what is called the nucleus. Since it consists of protons and neutrons, the nucleus is positively charged, and then you have those electrons orbiting the nucleus. So let's dive deeper into the history and specifically the evolution of the atomic model. So first of all, we have Dalton's model. This model was created by John Dalton in 1808. Now what he had discovered and thought was that matter consisted of indivisible atoms, atoms that you couldn't really break. And he thought that atoms were combined in different combinations to make up compounds. Next, we have the plum pudding model, created by J.J. Thomson in 1904. Now, what he thought was that atoms were like plum puddings, consisting of positively charged pudding and negatively charged plums within it. Then, you have the nuclear model, not nuclear bombs, but the other kind of nuclear. So it was basically created by Ernest Rutherford in 1911, and he was the first to discover and think of the concept of a nucleus. Now, he thought that there was a positively charged nucleus with electrons floating around it. Next up, the Bohr model. Made by Niels Bohr in 1913, this model was essentially applying the idea of orbits. And what Bohr thought was that electrons orbited the positively charged nucleus. Then, we have the quantum mechanical model made by Erwin Schrödinger in 1920s. Now, his name is certainly going to be familiar to you. You probably recognize him from the famous Schrödinger's cat. Now, Schrödinger's idea of an atom isn't too far away from Bohr's, and what he thought was that the orbitals were more kind of randomized, that they kind of buzzed around swiftly around the nucleus instead of orbiting almost in a perfect spherical manner. Now, the final model, which is basically a combination and finalization of the past few models. Now, essentially, you have the idea of the nucleus and protons coming from Rutherford in 1919, and the idea of neutrons coming from James Chadwick in 1932. Now, in this diagram, you can see the protons and neutrons stuck together almost, but what the point of that was is to simply show you that neutrons and protons are within the nucleus, which is still included in that model. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.